you're going through three phases in life all the time. You're either going through a storm, you're coming out of a storm, or you're about to go into a storm. That's how I view life. Life's not easy and it's hard. I would say that was the storm, those 6 months, but I knew that there was an end in sight at some point. And I finally just had a mental shift. Like, hey, my wife comes first and foremost, and I need to make sure that this is sound. And if this is sound, then I could be a better business owner. I could be a better CEO. I could be a better mentor. I could be a better coach. I could be a better colleague. But I've got to make sure that the foundation is right at home in order for me to do that. Welcome, entrepreneurs, to Pay or Quit,
where we reveal the gritty truth behind business success.
People see the glory, but not the struggle it takes to get there.
We're here to share the real stories of entrepreneurs navigating the tough intersection of business and relationships. I'm Tony Cline.
And I'm Shawn Johnson. And together we'll guide you through the real challenges faced as serial entrepreneurs.
Join us for the untold stories behind the scenes.
Buckle in. It might get messy.
Hey, welcome back to part 2 of our series where Shawn and I decided to interview each other and give you guys a little bit more of a deep understanding of who your two hosts are. So we're going to jump in, and it's now my turn to interview Shawn. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to just share with you and welcome all of our listeners and viewers from around the globe. We now have listeners in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. Some of the biggest states in America that we've got listeners from is Florida, California, Arizona, Colorado. So welcome to all of you, and we appreciate you tuning into the show. Shawn, welcome back to part 2.
Thanks, Tony. I guess I'm ready. Let's hit it.
So I wanted to start. You're a pretty humble guy, and I wanted to start with sharing a little bit about where you're at in your life right now, because I know if I didn't prod you a little bit, you might not share that. So I asked you before we started if there was anything off limits, and you said no. So I want to start with that. I want to start with where are you at in your life right now, and then we're going to start peeling back the layers and picking at some scabs. So let's get started with the good stuff.
Yeah, sounds amazing. So yeah, like I don't enjoy talking about myself, but where I am at, well, I'm 42, a husband, father, got 2 amazing kids and an amazing wife. 3 years ago, we sold a business, and I think I've mentioned before that wasn't the guy that wanted to sell. I was ready to keep it coming, keep it going, because I so much enjoy being a CEO or a manager or whatever operator of the business. I loved it very much. So my life has been different these last few years. I've been trying to just really focus on creating as much value as I can to other people. I spend a lot of time one-on-ones. I'll take someone out to lunch who's looking for financial freedom and not sure how to do that, or looking to get into real estate investing, and they'll we'll just talk over lunch or whatever. I do that a lot. People reach out to me a lot for that, and I really do enjoy that. I also enjoy creating content for financial peace, especially small business owners. It's sad to me that people will take so much risk in owning a business, and then they don't reach financial freedom through that business. And I think a lot of it I see is like their personal finance habits transpose over to their business habits, and their finances at home are really no different than their finances in the business. And it's just sad to me, like, we live in the most prosperous country in the world, that we have all this opportunity, and it's anywhere from 66 to 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It's no different, I've discovered, with small business owners. So I just have really spent a lot of time thinking through that and trying to help other business owners through that. And then I guess where I'm at emotionally, it's weird to be 42 years old and like not running a business after doing it so long. I love hanging out with the kids and I love hanging out with Kristen, my wife, but there's only so much of that you can do. You know, everybody's got other things to do in lives and stuff like that. Coaching sports I really enjoy, but you know, you've got to have a purpose-driven life. And that's where I've found myself in the last 3 years. So,
Well, let's be blunt about this because I you're still dancing around the issue a little bit, and I want to be blunt because of those habits that you and Kristen had, that with your personal finances and your business finances, you've been able to find yourself in a situation where anything that you decide to do moving forward is because you want to do it, not necessarily because you need the paycheck, right? And so the things that you've done in the past with your investing and your businesses, you've taken a lot of risks and a lot of those have paid off. I'm curious about the fact that, like you said, having that purpose driven life, the things that you're now putting your effort into, how do you find that purpose? Because I know when people are living paycheck to paycheck, their purpose is I got to pay rent, I got to pay my mortgage, I got to pay the electric bill, right? So there's this drive out there that keeps people moving towards something, even if they're not getting ahead. They continue to drive towards something. Being in your situation where you're at now, what drives you?
yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting. The financial piece to this has been way better than I ever dreamed. Like, you know, you look back 10 years ago and I never thought I would be where I am today. And that, what does that mean? I think you're trying to get some specifics out of me, so I'll get more specific. You know, I have zero bad debt. You know, the only debt that we have is investment debt, which means like if you want to go buy a rental property, it's income producing um, debt, if you will. So it's leveraged in the purpose of producing income. That opens up a really nice way to live because those things produce income. So there's that. The purpose, I guess, piece of this is I don't have to live for a paycheck, which is weird because we're almost like programmed in life to do that. Like I've got to strive for this and that. Now, what do I spend my time with? I spend my time looking at investment opportunities, whether it's in the property management space. I've really enjoyed some software investments that we've had in our space because I do care deeply in the property management space that we've been in, that I'm not in anymore. But I care deeply about it. So those opportunities are really great. The other one is I've looked outside of this industry at various, like a silicone chip manufacturer. I believe that the higher, like, what's the mission driven point of an investment? I look at that, like, who are the CEOs? You know, do they align with my ethics and morals? But there's a piece of like, why would I invest in a company first and foremost? And a recent investment we did is because I believe that America should produce chips. And that's not a, silicone chips, by the way, like processors. That's not a thing that's really been going on for a long time. Most America or most chips are manufactured in Taiwan. So I want to invest in companies I believe in. So what's the purpose here? I think my purpose, maybe my impact, is to help others along the path of finding financial freedom where they're not strapped to the W-2 job, if you will. And maybe the job is fulfilling to them, and that's great. But can they um, can they find fulfillment beyond just clocking into work and collecting a paycheck, and then using those financial resources for good? So that's kind of the, I guess, the icing on the cake. Like, how can I use our financial resources that I've been so blessed with for good? Um, like, for instance, last year we got the opportunity to open a community center and church in Costa Rica, and we paid for that in full. And that was a huge thing for us because I feel like the opportunity in other countries aren't as great. And so, how can we, as wealthier Americans, contribute to a greater world? And so, that's something that I'm proud of. I'm glad we got the opportunity to do that. We're looking at doing that again this next year.
Sean, it's been great to hear you open up about that stuff because I know you're doing some great things, and I know that you don't normally share that. So, uh, it's good to hear the things that come out of. It's not just all about building the wealth, and some people are out there. How big can my bank account get? And that becomes almost an obsession. And it's good to hear that it's not just about the bank account getting big. It's about that security to be able to then make a better impact in the world. So, um, thanks for sharing that. I want to shift gears a little bit now and talk a little bit about something you said in our opener. You said that during our time as business partners, when we had the company, you were not in favor of selling. You were our CEO. We had appointed you CEO, and we've talked a little bit about that in the past, but you had mentioned that you were not in favor of selling, and obviously we did. Now looking back at it, do you think that you would ever open up another company where you were running a similar type of organization, not even in the same sector? I'm not talking about getting back into property management, but are would you do you have a desire to be somebody that's running a larger company, or is that kind of a phase of your life that's come and gone?
That's a good question. I do think about this quite a bit. For me, I don't like to close the doors on any opportunity or possibility. So if the opportunity was presented, I would 100% evaluate that and see if that was good for me and our family. But I would say that there's a piece of me that says yes, I would love to go out and try to create a unicorn or something. I think there's just a lot of sexiness to it, if you will, but there's not a lot of reality to that. The reality of creating a unicorn is just such a slim chance, if you will. But there's this cool like sexiness to it, if you will. So yeah, I would say that if the opportunity was there, I would 100% enjoy and love to CEO a company like that. Why? I love the people side. I love helping employees um, be a better part of themselves and growing. And how do we make an impact in the world in a positive manner with the business? And I think that that's the beautiful thing about business. Probably my favorite part is that it creates a value for a marketplace that otherwise wouldn't have it unless that business existed. And that's the cool thing I love about business. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I'd totally love to do that again if it was there. It's not something I'm actually striving for. Like I'm not actively striving for that at this point in my life. And but I probably will because look, I look at people like let's take for example Ariana Huffington, who created the Huffington Post at 55 years old and grew it to be, I think, some ridiculous amount. She sold it in 10 years or something like that, and it sold for a chunk of change. So I look at myself, I'm 42. She's 55. Well, she was 55. I think she's 70 now. Um, like, there shouldn't be a point in at least my life that I'm not striving to do something greater and better. And I want to be better than I was yesterday. Today is my mission for the day is to be better than I was yesterday.
Sure. You mentioned something about there being a little bit of a sexiness of being a CEO, and I agree with that. I think that when people think of a CEO of a company, they think about fast cars and playing golf in the middle of the day and making deals over drinks or something like that. I don't think they see the actual work that goes into being a CEO and managing those people's lives that you have that are working for you and having to make tough decisions about cutting back staff or repositioning the company and eliminating product lines which affect people. Tell me about one of your darkest moments as being a CEO and just kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, it is not all roses and butterflies. There are So many moments of strife and struggle, and maybe even like the pull and the tug of, like, is this the right decision? But this person says this is the right decision. And I'll give you some examples. When we did Home Vault, we had 6 executives, me being one of them, and very great experience was in that room with 6 people that have been there, done that, grown businesses, been business owners for a long time. And then to try to do something completely different was very challenging. But one thing, probably the deepest, darkest moment, was about 7, 8 months into the merger. My most trusted advisor in life is my wife, Kristen, and who is a really savvy, smart business owner. Um, she makes decisions on a different level than I really understood until about that 8 month mark. And I found that I wasn't listening to her enough on what she thought was the best direction forward. I was actually trying to listen to all partners, which in turn was actually, there's such contrarian viewpoints that it caused me to not listen to probably my most, my most trusted advisor, if you will. And I feel like now, looking back, all of the things that her, she had presented, those ideas and whatnot, where to take it, were the right moves. They were really good, really good. And we had, the late night conversations. We got to a point, Tony, to mention the darkness. So when I wasn't listening, um, to Kristen, the natural human reaction seems, okay, if they're not going to listen to me, I'm going to shut down. And so Kristen started to shut down, and that made it super hard at the house, and and when you own a business and you are in business with your wife, this will probably relate. A lot of people can relate to this. Kristen and I literally share, and at that time we were remodeling our house, so we were literally sitting on opposite sides of the formal dining room table, day in and day out, 12 hours a day. You know what I mean? And to have any non-cohesiveness or some tension or something like that, it was just really tough. And so we I would just say, hey, let's go for a 5 minute walk, a 10 minute walk, and just talk through this, and that helped a lot. But there was a lot of emotions. It was very dark for a period of time. Like, Chris and I have a phenomenal marriage. Thank God. I think any lesser marriage, we would have been divorced through that whole situation, because it was very hard. Two of the partners, husband and wife, and then there's 4 other partners that also have to be considered. And what I've always said, like, to be an effective CEO, I think you have to be a black belt in emotional stability. um, and I truly believe that, because it's like you're hit every single day with, so and so did this to me, or so and so did that, or whatever. And or you're not listening to my ideas, or whatever the case may be. And it was tough. Like, it was dark times. Kristen was probably depressed. I was depressed. Um, the kids, we have young kids. We want to be there for them. And I also wanted very deeply to have a very successful business. You know, was that a strike at, was that a stroke at trying to get a unicorn, the home vault deal? I don't think so, but it was to make something bigger and more impactful for the industry. And that's, I care deeply about it.
Yeah. How did you pull out of that, or did we only pull out of that when we sold?
No, actually, I would say we pulled out of that. Probably, it's probably 6 months of darkness. The way I look at life is that you're going through 3 phases in life all the time. You're either going through a storm, you're coming out of a storm, or you're about to go into a storm. That's how I view life. So life's not easy, and it's hard. And I would say that was the storm, those 6 months, but I knew that there was an end in sight at some point, right? And I wanted to be, and I finally just had a mental shift, like, hey, my wife comes first and foremost, and I need to make sure that this is sound. So, and if this is sound, then I could be a better business owner. I could be a better CEO. I could be a better mentor. I could be a better coach. I could be a better colleague. But I've got to make sure that the foundation is right at home in order for me to do that. And so it was a mental shift on my part, for at least my side of it. I'm sure Kristen had her own side of that. But that's where I had to take my mind and to uh not be, I think I was being selfish too. Like I look back and thinking that I can do it alone, make these decisions on my own, if you will. And I don't think that's the right stance. It takes outward perspectives to influence good decisions. And the other point that I really realized is that I needed to make decisions quicker because of all of
Hmm.
the outside influence and taking all of these perspectives in account for a decision, it drug on the decision making process, and that is not okay. In those 6 months, I've you know what, enough. I've heard enough. This is the decision we need to make forward and move with it. Even if it's the wrong decision, it's certainly better than a decision that drags out and doesn't get made.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a concern actually when we formed our merger about the fact that you and Kristen were two of the partners
Mhm.
and that you were married. And so it was sort of this perception of, is Sean and Kristen going to always vote the same way on issues, or are they going to somehow control more of what's going on because they're married? And I think that played a part in some of the other partners, myself included, of, hey, or do we really have six independent partners, or do we have two that are sort of sharing votes? And I think that because you understood that when we went into it having that conversation, that you may have discounted Kristen's votes a little bit, or her input a little bit, in order to come off that you weren't playing favoritism.
I 100% agree. And I
Yeah,
didn't realize that until the hard times came. And going
yeah,
through that storm, if you will. Like I didn't even know. And then yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
All
that
right.
totally
Well,
influenced it. So
a couple minutes back, you mentioned mentorship and being a mentor, and I want to just kind of dive into your success and your progress over time. Have you had many mentors? Has mentorship played a part in your just evolution, or was this sort of a lonely at the top, go it alone kind of thing?
yeah, I've typically always had mentors. Um from a very early age. I've always viewed my dad as a mentor in my life. He's been a phenomenal father, um, and really understood business very well. And then, like through business or through property management, even the property management companies or the previous car wash that we had, and those types of businesses, I kind of always seek them out. And it's not that, it's anything formal. Like it never was like anything super formal, but like, hey, you're crushing it. I want to learn how you're doing it. Would you mind we go to lunch or can we have coffee or something, and really talk through business and then just build that relationship? Yes, mentors have always been a part of my life. I've noticed a few times in my business career that I haven't really had a direct, like, or maybe a constant connection with a mentor. And I've noticed that business does suffer a little bit because you're not bouncing ideas off of somebody and looking for, because like our minds will create a vacuum, and then our ideas become the only ideas and we think they're the greatest ideas. And you need somebody to bounce those ideas off of so you can validate or invalidate uh, those ideas.
Yeah, some of my favorite moments with you since we've sold the company is when we call each other and we'll have an idea and present it. And some of my favorite moments is when you just shoot holes all over in whatever the idea is, because then once we solve those issues that are brought to light, it makes it a much better product or idea or whatever. And so it's good to have somebody to present it to that's not just, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, but to say, look, you've got something there, but here are the issues one, two, and three. And I think that that's if you find a mentor that you can do that with, that's not only giving you good ideas, but has done either what you want to do or something very similar, I think that that is very impactful. I know people are always looking for little life hacks or something, and I don't think there is such a thing as a hack, right?
Mhm.
You either do the work or you don't. There's not really any shortcuts. But one of the ways that you can accelerate your success is by surrounding yourselves with other people who are performing at that really high level and continue to do so.
Totally. Yep, I totally agree.
Yeah. So speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about your habits at this point. Have you created habits that now that you're not running a business, are you and I'll just speak to myself, when I'm training for a race, I'm very specific because there's a deadline of something I have to do. Have your habits, now that you have a little bit more free time and more flexibility in your schedule, have you kept those habits of doing the right things at the right time, or has that kind of slipped?
Yeah, I would say, like, I keep it simple. Like, there's this big thing about morning routines and all this jazz. Literally, I wanna get up early. How do I get up early? I go to bed early. That's a habit. Um, and then when I get up, I go work out, and then I get to work. That's a habit. I think, like, we get in these lulls, if you will. I'm gonna get up whenever I want. I'm gonna open social media. 9 o'clock rolls around. I'm finally at my desk working. Now, so that's one that I've had before this transition in my life, that has just stayed with me, and so therefore I'm able to put in a full day's work, enjoy the work that I'm doing. I would say that what has changed is that I will give myself arbitrary deadlines, a deadline to complete, because I know, if say I wanted to complete something, and it should take me a week to do it. Well, if I give myself a week to do it, it will take a week to do it. But I give myself 4 days to do it, it will take 4 days to do it. And it's okay if it's only 80, 90% there. There's something that I am not 100% consistent with, is that mindset. But if I'm like, I feel overwhelmed. Like, one thing is my newsletter. I want to write a good newsletter weekly and I don't miss. That is a deadline that I've set with myself that does cause some stress, because sometimes I've done the bulk of the writing, and then come Friday afternoon, I haven't actually formatted or that put that final touch on it. And now I'm stressing at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So, I think goals deadlines are super good. If it doesn't have a time to it, it's probably not going to get done. It's just going to float around, and you haven't prioritized that. So keeping that as a habit is really good. But I've noticed that if my stress level is going up, then I'll lax the deadline, just to because my health is more important than X, Y, or Z in life. You know what I mean? Um, and
Sure.
then I would say the other point is just to make goals. Like, most of my goals are centered around financial goals, and then goals with the family. So not necessarily a business per se. So, like, how can I achieve X, or how can I, reach this investment or whatever. And then, like, how can I, when the kids get off of school at 3, can I spend the rest of the day with them from 3 on, instead of working till 7, 8 o'clock at night? That's a goal. Um, those types of things, in my opinion, have to be set, or you just kind of run through life. Like, a life without a goal is just, you're just moving through life. I have been better at just dwindling my goals to about 5 at a time, instead of like having too many. When you own a business, like, you got business goals and personal goals and financial goals and all these other things. And so I've really kept my life into about five or less.
You said something a while back that in our conversation here, and I want to circle back to that. So, because I think where you're at now, not everybody has a portfolio of investment properties, and but I think the people that are listening, everybody's looking to get started or have been through that phase of getting started in business. And you mentioned that you owned a car wash at one point, and that was kind of how you got into entrepreneurship, if I understand it right. I know you had done some other things where you were flying helicopters and doing different things, but I think that was, if I understand, your first step into being an entrepreneur. So, walk us through what it was like to take that first step before you had the safety net, I'll say, before you had a safety net to make that decision. So if there's somebody out there that's listening that says, I want to be an entrepreneur, but the paycheck to paycheck is a closer reality than having money put back to being able to take a risk. But without taking that risk, I'm stuck in the paycheck to paycheck. Help us through what your thought process was at that time and what made you decide to eventually stop standing on the edge of the pool and jump in.
Yeah, great question. Um, as I reflect back, I think it was a a an epiphany or a knowledge of that if I continue to work for somebody else, I'm gaining their wealth and not my own, was something that was always in the back of my mind. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I knew that if I wanted to achieve the financial goals that I wanted in life, and meaning like, let me let me point out the alternative. The alternative and how kind of society points us is go get a job. Wait, go back. Uh, Go to college, get an education, go get a good job, work yourself up, you know, and just 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5, or whatever that job might be, and save money 10%, invest 10%. And eventually, when you're 65 years old, you'll have enough money to retire. And that literally just did not sit well with me because I thought, there has to be a faster way to this. And I am not a get rich quick guy, not at all. But there's got to be a faster way than to reach financial peace or freedom than to work. It's like the labor of your back all the time, and then eventually have enough in the future. So, kind of the mental thought was, well, how can I do this? Well, I think being a business owner has been in my blood. Um, was I don't know if the born with it or if you're your environment or DNA or but my dad was always like in entrepreneurial mindset, and although he worked for a company, he's about to retire. He's worked for a company for 40 something years. He always had that entrepreneurial mindset, like, how do I create the most value for the people around me, and in turn, if I could create that value, then I get value back in my life. That's what I define as kind of like that entrepreneurial spirit. And I saw him, well, how can I take that mindset and then put it into business so I can reach financial goals, if you will, and help other people as well? So that was kind of a shift. The other part was is like I knew that um, I knew that working for somebody else, um, although when I was flying helicopters, it was just such a great job that I needed to use the time that I had beyond my shift work, if you will, to make more. So I think that's a thing that I see common, especially people in their 20s and 30s. Like you're young, you can work 16 hours a day for a couple years without burnout. You know what I mean? Like put in the work, and so that delay the gratification today so in the future you can have something really nice to be proud of. So I had a 7 and 7 schedule back then, and I would not have taken the leap to become a business owner if I didn't have a good not a good job or a good paying job or anything like that, but I had an income. And I don't recommend people like don't go quit your jobs just to go start a business. Do that on the side, validate it, and when you know you're creating value and it's producing income for you, phase it out, right? Produce enough income of the business that now it is reaching or matching or can allow me to quit my security, my job, to do that. And so that's what we did. Like I had a 7 and 7 job schedule, and off when I was off, I was working at the business, and when I was on, I was working at the business. You know what I mean? Unless I was in the cockpit of a helicopter, I was thinking business. Um, and how do I make our business as best as we possibly can?
So take me to that moment when you took that leaf, you signed the agreement, whatever that means. You signed the agreement for the car wash. I've got to imagine that while that was a stressful day, that was probably a pretty happy day. Am I on
Yes.
point?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
would say it's
now I want to,
liberating.
yeah. So I want to skip all of that honeymoon phase of, oh, we're business owners, to what was the first real, oh crap moment that you can remember in that business?
Oh, great question. Okay, so yeah, we take this leap of faith, right? And I think just entrepreneurs are heavily optimistic. And you think about what can be instead of what will be, or you know what I mean? What's the possibilities with this business? And I remember, our first year as car wash owners, we did 54 W-2s. These are employees from the same life walk as McDonald's, if you will. It's a very tough business. We had a lot of college kids, but I remember probably within like the first 2 or 3 months, we had a low income producing month. And so we struggled to make payroll. We're not getting any money from the business, right? Struggled to make payroll. And one of our major systems in the car wash, it was like a hydraulic motor, took a dump. And that was the conveyor belt hydraulic motor that actually made the cars go through the car wash, right? And so we have this big mechanical bill, and then we have already the threat of not being able to make payroll. And I remember dipping into our own personal finances, which we were not, by no means wealthy at all. And then it was even worse than that. So I called upon my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, I don't think we can make payroll this month. Can we borrow?" And I think it was like $3,500, which was a lot of money back then. It's a lot of money today, to ask for somebody to bail you out. And he graciously said yes. He felt like this was a season and not a trend, if you will. Like this is just gonna how it's gonna be. And so he invested and believed in us, and we paid him back the following month. I believe it only took us 1 month. But yeah, that was a very scary moment when you go from a security of a job that if I just show up and do the job, I get a paycheck, to everything now is on the shoulders of us to make this happen. And not only doesn't make it happen for me, but we had those employees that we are also financially supporting by the value that the business creates. And so if we fail, they also fail, right? They have also not collected a paycheck or can't provide for their families, or, all of those things. And so that was, it's humbling, very humbling time.
And to the people who are listening that are either new entrepreneurs or thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, how how common is that experience that you just shared? Was that just kind of a one-off, you got unlucky, or is that
No,
just part of being an entrepreneur?
that became, man, I would say that is part of being an entrepreneur. And I think everybody probably needs to experience some pain like that. Because it really helps you understand, like, I don't want to go back to that. Let's do whatever it takes to solve these problems so I'm not facing them again. But yeah, and it's just in full disclosure, 3 years of owning that car wash, and that would occur. But what was our mission then? We have to build an emergency fund with the business. So if we can't meet payroll, we have a savings that we can meet our obligations. And that was hard. It was hard to dig to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to flash forward now. I want to switch gears. We'll start to wrap this up, but I want to throw a question out here for you. I want you to tell me. We're going to now flash forward 5 years, and I'm going to interview Shawn 5 years from now. Shawn, just tell me what you've got going on.
Oh,
It's 5 years later.
yeah.
What's your life look like now?
Whew, my kids are about to graduate high school. That's a scary thought. 5 years from now, my daughter will be 18 and my son will be 16, and I hope that we'll be planning for the digital nomads, if you will. Chris and I have a dream to, live in an Airbnb for a month and then move to the next Airbnb and so on. And so we'll be planning for that, making sure that our kids are set through college and, not financially set, but meaning like they're prepared to go to college and embark on the world. I think as a father, that's the most important thing that I can do is set them up for success, that they can rely on themselves and believe in themselves to do it. And then the other part is 5 years from now, I feel like I just want to be as valuable to others as possible. How do I do that now? I try to do that through our YouTube channel, through this podcast as well, and just sharing at least what's worked and what hasn't worked for me, experiences through that, and maybe a thriving online business will come of that as well. But I love producing content. I love helping others kind of go through this entrepreneurial journey, and more importantly, I love people. I love helping people reach the financial freedom of that. So 5 years from now, I hope I'm doing that on a large scale.
Very good. All right, let's wrap this up. I'm going to give you one last opportunity to have the last word and close us out.
Anything and everything, huh?
Anything and everything, whatever's on your mind.
Oh man, well, thanks for the spot there, Tony. This is always fun for me. But I guess the final thought here is that, or my message to the world, if you will, in this moment is, if you're going through hard times, those are just a moment in time, and they won't last forever. But I would say that if you let them last, they will last. So my point is like, look for positives, look for learning opportunities, look for the ability to move past it and get through them. The stronger times, it's like diamonds, right? Diamonds are formed through extreme pressures, just like human beings are formed through pressure as well. When we're in those tough situations, we get better because we can persevere through them, and grit is what gets us through. So be super gritty and make things happen, create value for others, and hopefully we can all make a small impact on the people around us and at least the world that we live in.
All right, Shawn, well said. Let's wrap this up. That's another one in the can.
Another one in the can. Thanks, Tony.
Yep. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise of what it really takes to be a successful entrepreneur.
If today's episode hit home, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.